Jim, welcome to the first episode of the Fantasy Countdown. I am your host, Carpenter of Web3. Alongside me in the co-host seat this week is 710 and Silva. Also on stage with us is special guest Ryan. Ryan, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you? Thank you for having me.
Very well. Yep, sorry about that. Silva got a little bit of a feedback, but yeah, super excited. So this today's episode, we're running a little bit behind, had some technical difficulties, so we will we're gonna kind of jump right into with Zed champions. So super excited about this sponsored tournament, the first ever sponsored tournament. So do you want to tell me a little more about Zed champions, and then kind of we'll jump into how the tournament's gonna work?
Yeah, totally. So I'll give a little bit of a rundown on Zed, how we got here, what we're looking to do with Fantasy Top, and why I think it's such a unique opportunity, not only for projects like ours, but of course for growing clout and growing obviously the pretty diehard user base that Fantasy Top already has, and then tapping into the Hero Network. So Zed is two products. We have a product called Zed Picks, and we have a product called Zed Champions. It is all a digital horse racing ecosystem. It is the sequel, let's call it, to Zed Run from 2021. If you're familiar with NFTs at all, I'm sure that you've heard Zed Run before. Our objective was basically, we spent the last several years redesigning the game's economy, launching a new product, and then broadly changing our concept of our business model. It is very similar to what you see from products like Hyperliquid and what you see from Pump, basically trying to generate some type of protocol revenue generation backing our token economy, and seeing how that actually builds into our core games ecosystem, which is basically champions, right? Horses are bred to basically go parabolic. They store their Zed token values. They race against each other automatically twice per day. And the best horses continue to win, continue to race for more, and continue to have more and more stored within them from both spectators and the owners' portion as they continue to win races. What we're trying to do is basically create something like the Coliseum in Web3, right? If you look at what Fantasy Top has done really well, people love competition. They love leaderboards. They love when there is some level of meritocracy, and they certainly love to place their own speculative money on meritocracies, right? It's obviously what we see being the most exciting thing in the space right now. For us, we had a game that had 500,000 NFTs in our previous version, and it was very dilutive. There was no real soul anymore to the actual horses that you were racing with. When we first started in 2021, some of the most popular horses and the most popular stables all built these really strong emotional connections. What we'd like to do with Champions is redefine what that felt like. The best horses in the game should have notoriety, they should have prestige, and they should garner a bunch of financial attention from the outside market. We built a two-pronged umbrella that could actually help bring this attention into some type of monetization that could benefit owners within the game and ultimately benefit our broader Web3 product. The first is staking. Right now, if you come onto Zed Champions, you can look at any horse on the leaderboard who's actively racing right now and put your own Zed token into their internal balance. We call this our version of staking. Essentially, it means that you join in on that horse's career. Every time a horse races, it pulls from the internal balance that it currently has up to 10% and matches the other 7 horses in the race, right? So 8 horses total. Everybody automatically contributes a certain portion of their balance, and this creates the prize pool within the race. In the original game of Zed, these entry fees were basically paid by the owner, and that was it. If it's a $5 race and there's 12 horses in the race, it's a $60 race, and the winner takes home 60%, right? Very simple game. In the new game, because there's all this other, let's call it Zed token that can be stored on the horses, we've seen horses go, upwards almost to $40,000 or higher in the amount that's stored on them. Why this is so unique for our model is every single day, twice per day, that horse, while it's still racing, needs to contribute up to 10% of that entire balance as an entry fee into the race. So we've allowed this mechanism for spectators to come on, get skin in the game, and even the best assets within our economy, see what it feels like to win. Obviously, these horses are doing well. They're at the top of the leaderboard. It's super exciting to, get exposure to something like that. And we hope that that can onboard them directly into horse ownership, NFT ownership, and to start to actually play the game, race, and feel that experience themselves of breeding a new horse. Now, above this whole layer, and then I'll kind of pause for some questions. Above that whole layer is ZPix. And this is our real like tour de force, right? We have basically long-term set our company up to not just be a Web3 startup style company, but to be a much more mature organization. The way we did this is specifically bringing on a new CEO. His name's Nir Efrat. He has a long and storied background in scaling apps, specifically in Web2. The reason why this applies for our new business model is that ZPix is a Web2 app, right? It's called a sweepstakes model Pix app. You basically come on, you buy coins, we give you the cash equivalent, and then you can actually use the cash to actually make picks on the game. Real money rewards, exactly like you might see from products like Fliff or maybe Stake.us if you're in the US. Our objective with this is that this is a fundamentally much more scalable application, right? Zed Champions, even though it's on Base and Base is making enormous strides to try to make onboarding much easier into crypto, it's still multiple tranches down, right? Like right now, you'll see people on board to the token distribution platforms, the launchers, the trading platforms, the DEXs, these things that are like super easy to understand. They feel very similar to using Robinhood, right? As you start to drift further down the protocol layer, you eventually get to games, right? Games need one of two things. They need to be easily understood and they need to be fun. Especially now in Web3, they need to have some underlying financial incentive to keep you there. Why are you not playing Call of Duty, right? Like one of the, the greatest franchises ever made, probably the most fun game ever made, right? Well, you're not playing that because you're looking to actually get paid for your time in some way, shape, or form, or at least get paid for the risk that you're putting down and also spending your time. And we really want to create that top of funnel that can allow people to have a much smoother experience stepping into those risk profile games. It's a huge leap to go from Call of Duty, where you're just doing microtransactions, spending on cosmetics and things like that, to then coming up to a game where the average price to breed a horse is like $60, right? That's the entire cost of buying Call of Duty every year when it comes out. So you have to ask yourself, how do we make these risk reward decisions for these users stepping down into these deeper protocols worth it? We tie everything back together to ZPix. So from ZPix, you can place a pick, get your daily bonus of $1, $2, place a pick on a horse. Then you can learn, oh, that horse did really well. Oh, that owner, oh, it's worth 30 grand. Like, that's crazy. How does that work? How is that owner getting paid? If there's other people staked on it, that's interesting to me. Then you come on to Zed Champions, and we might eventually have some type of like first time offer, right? If you're a ZPix player, come over to Zed Champions, get $50 free of Zed token, make your first stake, and now we try to retain you from there. So we've created a very cohesive and structured top down to bottom down, one, economic model, and two, business model, monetization pathways all the way, that we think is just infinitely more scalable than the model that we ran with in 2021, and also has much more, let's call it, coherent design principles in place, allowing us to pull different levers to manage the game's economy and ultimately fuel the growth of the game from a much more scalable segment. Yeah, that's my spiel to start.
No, yeah, it's funny because it sounds exactly, what we're going through with fantasy, after you have, that core user base, trying to think of, scaling and, kind of building it all and making it all really connect together. And so, your ZPix is kind of like our tactics free to play, kind of, brings
Exactly.
everybody in. That kind of funnel with the risk and kind of progressing and slowly easing them into, actually, these cards do get expensive. I'm sure the horses get expensive. And so it's something you have to kind of really put together and find the pieces. But no, yeah, that's it sounds exciting for ZPix and excited to try that out.
Yeah, I think it's a problem that a lot of people didn't really think they needed to solve in 2021 because the carrot was so large, right? Like, you would come on and, you mint a new project and the new project might 10x, 15x, and, you're just flipping NFTs to other people. And there was so much new money coming in, so much external funding coming in, that it felt like the revolving door would never end, right? And then, of course, it does. It always does. Markets are cyclical. You have these huge different type of speculative events. Those happen over and over again. What you need to do as a product building company who's not, our sole purpose isn't to monetize speculation. That's not the entire point. Our purpose is a utility driven protocol backed by a scalable Web2 app. In order to have that business model make a lot of sense, it needs to be easy to onboard into the funnel. And it also needs to not have a prohibitively high cost of entry. if you have a prohibitively high cost of entry, you are not going to get those people who might have tried your game, but they're just not ready to outlay that level of financial risk. We tend to desensitize to these things in this space because you say to yourself, oh, it's just an ETH, right? Well, yeah, Ethereum's, over $4,000, right? That's a lot of money for a lot of people, especially people who play games, and especially people who maybe were onboarded briefly in 2021 with the whole play to earn mechanic, where they really did feel like they never had to put any money down, right? They came in, and if I pay this game, I build a network of scholars and other people to actually, continue to also play the game for me and farm the underlying protocol token. Like, we can make it, and we don't really need to outlay any risk. I don't think that that's going to be the case in 2025 anymore. I think you might get onboarded to these different protocols in a much smoother way from a UX perspective to learn how they work and learn what you might need to actually get over that hump of putting that first risk down. But at this time, hopefully, by the time you put that risk down, you actually understand what the upside objective is, and you understand how you can actually accomplish that, as opposed to 2021, where you might not even have known how to set up your MetaMask. And within like 10 minutes of setting up your MetaMask, you were already paying $600 for like a mint, right? Like that's like a super dissociative thing. And that's why so many people churned after their first like on-chain transaction, because they got burned immediately. And they're like, oh, what am I doing? Like I just spent 45 minutes downloading some random crypto app, and now my card's like getting a fraud decline because they don't know what I'm buying. And it's just like everything has changed from 2021, right? So capitalizing on that understanding that people are going to have a much easier way of onboarding into these products if you provide that structure for them, utilize good third-party tools to actually have, seamless crypto onboarding, on ramps, things like that. Obviously the base DEX is like Coinbase DEX is like a huge advantage for a lot of products who might not necessarily have the volume they need yet to get a huge centralized exchange listing. People like Fantasy Top, Zed, Pirate Nation, a bunch of these games are competing with these enormous protocols, right? Like, we're not going to compete with Hyperliquid when they're doing billions of dollars in turnover on perps, right? Like it's just a completely fundamentally different product. Games exist much further down. Let's call it like the time retention curve. You might get onto Robinhood, from like a email or whatever, and then you're trading stocks because you understand stocks. You might trade a cryptocurrency because you know how to trade stocks, right? So like you can see how you kind of go down the iceberg of risk, right? And the bottom of the iceberg of risk is probably Web3 gaming, because not only are you not just paying $60 for like AAA, IP, you're probably paying more, and you're probably getting less from the perspective of how well thought out and like how, we haven't spent 20 years building this franchise, right? Like, some Activision, Blizzard, et cetera. So, you fundamentally have to compete with the time that those people are putting in, and also the attention that they get from just spending, tens of millions of dollars every single month on marketing. And then we also have to compete with the sports books and the other areas to put on risk to potentially generate yield. The way to do that is to create something really compelling that's novel and has an underlying moat. And for us, if you look at the entire landscape of, let's call it digital racing, there is no real niche thing that says, oh, there's actually users generating this. Like this isn't, you can go into like any casino and you can see a little digital horse racing thing. It's just an algorithm. It's half these things are rigged, right? You click on a horse and they just run across the screen. That's it. There's no emotional availability for you to connect to what you're actually watching. There's no spectacle at all, right? I remember the first time I watched a Zed race. It was a horse that I bred. I watched it win its first race, and I said to myself, I was like, I feel like I just saw something. Like I just felt something. An NFT that, a digital asset, all of the whole story about decentralization, all of that thing is obviously what maybe got you through the door. But seeing utility lead to emotional connection is the entire reason they're horses, right? They could be blobs, just rolling across the screen, and you'd be like, oh, they're worth 50K, maybe I'll bet on it. But that's not exactly what we're looking at here. What we're looking at here is trying to rebuild sport, right, in the digital world. In order to do that, it has to be compelling, it has to be worth watching, and they have to be the best, and there has to be risk, right? There's a reason why when you watch NFL players and they get hurt, you're like, oh my God, their career, like millions of dollars around them, like it's an event, right? The exact same way when you see a rookie make a huge play, catch a one-handed catch right in the end zone, toe tap his feet and win the game, that all of a sudden their career is made. Think about like OBJ, right? Like Odell Beckham Jr., when he caught that first ball for the Giants, he became storied forever. We're trying to recreate those moments. We want to have $1 million horse, right? We want to see a horse win $1 million in a single race. We want people to be betting all of this money, across different types of protocols, whether it's making picks, whether it's staking on horses. We want there to be risk created around this spectacle so that the owners feel something, so that all the way up to someone just placing a pick feels something. If you're just doing things to try to make money and losing all of the level of soul that comes with being in this space, those are not things that will last, right? The reason why Zed still has this intensely passionate community of people who've been playing this game, this ecosystem since 2020, is because it means something to them. And that's something, Fantasy Top, I see it a ton from the people who are on the timeline talking about, the different styles of the game. I see all these deck building strategies. And, I say to myself, this is the type of community you want to align with, right? People who care about the product that they're playing. There's a lot of people who are like, shilling Hyperliquid, shilling like all these different, dexes and different types of exchanges, who they only do it because they think they're going to make money from it, right? Like, and you see a lot of problems with this with like Kaido and these different types of InfoFi platforms. There's no soul in yapping about something you don't care about, right? And our objective, and we can get into Clout later on, and why that's such an important partnership for us, is to make sure that there's some type of, not just financial stake, but also some type of emotional stake as well. Because that's what we feel like could be the most powerful driver for people trying to recreate the feeling of sport.
Absolutely. I like all the crossover between fantasy as well as Zed Champions, and I feel like there's it does have the potential to have that stickiness, right? And I know someone who, so growing up raising horses and stuff, it's like, as well as like having horse races whenever you go into like a casino or whatever, I feel like it's always been, anyone who watches horse races has wanted to, at least myself, has wanted to be like, what would it be like to actually like have ownership in one of those horses, right? I know my brother and I've always talked about that, and this is a way to do that. Like,
the original concept of Zed really came from, our founders saying to themselves, they saw a poster for like a stud fee in Australia, like, someone was advertising their horse so that you could, breed with it, whatever, and start your own stable or whatever in real life. When you start to think about the type of infrastructure that you need to develop around yourself to break into that world, like the accessibility of digital horse racing of real life horse racing is, non-existent, right? You need a farm, you need all this land, you need, to be able to have all of this like industrial complex around you in order to get there. And that's just to actually set up, right? And then from there, you need to get into these races, you need to win those races, and you need to rise up the ranks. Totally understand, like it's not like there's no pathway, right? That would be unrealistic to say it's impossible, because you say, somebody, I've known somebody, everybody kind of knows somebody who either had a horse, bought a horse, raced somewhere, saw it on social media, whatever, right? But like true accessibility means that anyone can do it, right? And the only way anyone can do it is if there is that free to play, you come in with no risk, then you start to, maybe get a little bit of risk on, you get a little bit of more confidence, you start to and then you scale up. Or you can step in at multiple different levels of risk tranche. You could come into Zed right now with 10K and dominate the game, right? And you could also come in with $100, make a lot of strategic decisions, end up in the exact same position of someone with 10K. We have plenty of stables who, had never actually bred anything significant before, came over from Zed Run, and have had an enormous amount of success in Zed Champions. Those types of experiences are what make crypto, especially crypto, so much different than what you see outside, right? Like if you said to yourself, I want to be the biggest, institutional stock trader in the world. Like that's my goal. That's what I want to be, like that. Or let's say you wanted to be, an NFL wide receiver, right? Well, if you're not above 6 feet, you're not, you're already basically screwed, right? And if you can't run a 4.4, now you're screwed too. So like there are these spectacles, right? And I think that's why esports, just as a little divergence, I think that's why esports are so popular and so like cool to watch, is because the people who are having success there, all they had to do was just dedicate their time and attention to their game. It doesn't have anything to do with like your genetics, whether or not you were like physically gifted, whether or not you went to the right high school and got scouted by the right teams and ended up at the right college and did all these compounded decisions, which make it, infinitely difficult to have success, as like a professional athlete, which is, obviously what billions of dollars every year are spent spectating on. Esports has had so much success because it feels like that could be something that you could accomplish, right? And then you see all of these different streaming houses popping up, content creation, you can see the downstream impact of accessibility in that type of esports landscape. And we're trying to recreate that type of a feeling, right? Where like if you see the best horse in the game right now has over $40,000 staked on it, we want you to say, why couldn't I breed a horse that gets that level of attention? And the answer is you can. You just need to learn how to play the game. And obviously it's not an easy game, right? Like if it was easy, then, why would anyone be playing? So there's obviously a huge risk tolerance curve and a huge learning curve that our objective is obviously to smoothen out the impacts over time. But unlike any other point in Zed's history, you can join right now for like $1 to $5, stake on the best horse in the game, and start to experience what it feels like to have, some type of skin and ownership over something that's unique, right? And it's very exciting to be watching something go from $5,000 to $40,000, right? Like everybody wants to be involved in something like that.
I'm muted, my bad. Absolutely. And then I wanted to touch just real quick on before the tournament kicks off. The how does everyone need to be like signed in for Zed before the tournament kicks off, or do they have a certain window to sign up?
Yeah. So you can sign up anytime through the competition. We have basically API access with the Fantasy Top team where I can go in and update all of the current X accounts that are linked on Zed Champions. And then your score will instantly be taken in, right? So that will probably be updated like a couple times a day throughout the tournament. So if you don't see your score now, or you're not on the Clout leaderboard, or you don't know kind of how that's working, don't worry. There will be like a manual catch-all that will run that will get you involved. But yeah, you definitely need to make an X or connect your X account to your Zed Champions account. It's super easy to do. You log on to Zed Champions, scroll down on the wallet page, and we'll post all this in an article for everybody to see. You connect your X account. That's all you need. Now I know who you are, and I also know who you are in Fantasy Top, which is going to be pretty critical to the long-term success of our partnership, right? We're not just doing this one-time Fantasy Top tournament. We have a long-term relationship building with Clout, and we will really be looking to leverage that to hopefully build out one of like the first real, let's call it on-chain metrics and mindshare hybrid leaderboards. You see this being a huge topic discussed right now. Everybody wants to be incentivized to talk about something because marketing is so difficult in this space. But at the same time, the product level and the people who are paying for the marketing would love there to be some type of evangelism, right? Like real evangelism. Just talking about something that you have no stake in is not evangelism. That's LARPing, as many would call it, right? Now, if you have actual risk exposure, you're top stable in the game, you're a top card holder in Fantasy Top, and you're the one speaking about it, your thoughts should have authority, right? And you should be amplified and paid for your ability to onboard other people as a consequence for your authority. And that's what people are doing this for. The reason why people building up their own personal brands, content creation pathways, is so that they can eventually monetize their own attention distribution, right? Like that's the whole point of being a content creator, or even having a social presence. Our objective is simply to just blend that with the metrics within our game so that we know that you actually care about what you're talking about and you're not just doing it for money. Because incentives are extremely powerful, but incentives for just incentivization sake are not powerful at all. That's actually unsustainable. And that's really the rhetoric that you're seeing throughout the space and the big discussion on InfoFi that I've seen, everybody on last week.
Yes. And that's one thing as a content creator myself, basically full-time, as well as doing full-time on fantasy, but also doing the content creation hybrid thing. So it's the stake in the game is one thing that I love seeing here. And it also needs to I think this is a huge advantage of being that first market mover doing it this way, because I really think it's going to take hold, and the first one moving is always a big deal, as well as really Zed Champions being the first one to really take advantage fully of Clout. And I know firsthand how cool the Clout system is. So
yeah,
really
I think a lot of that has to do.
Yeah,
I think a lot of that had to do, at least from our perspective, strategically, choosing who. There's obviously multiple different types of mindshare aggregators. We've had a previous partnership with Kaido. We did like a little Yap run and stuff like that. And for me, just as someone passionate about Web3 gaming and looking to try to make sure we have this micro PMF, right? Like you have Kaido, which is incentivizing everybody to talk about anything. And there's this huge market and bots and everything like that of people just talking to talk, right? And they've been paid to talk for so long. I do think it will be structurally difficult for them not only to attract these, let's call them lower tier tranche projects, right? Like you see Kaido getting all of the the exchanges, the new L1s going live, like all of these super high revenue generation protocols that are trying to TGE for 200 million on Capital Leaderboard, like Capital Launchpad rather. Like that's great. We need that in the space. We need there to be this direct pathway for enormous VC backed or community backed protocols to go live with enough attention to sustain whether or not they actually achieve product market fit once they're live. The biggest shame in this space, at least from my perspective, is that there's really great products and protocols going live that get no attention whatsoever because marketing is extremely difficult in this space, and you have to financially incentivize people to discuss you either by having a game that they're all going to 10x on, or something that offers them that intrinsic incentive so that they'll actually participate, tell their friends, et cetera. It could be as simple as referral codes, which we will have soon, by the way, both for Zed Champions, and we do have them for Zed Picks. So I'll be talking about that a lot throughout this week as Zed Picks is ready to go live in the midst of all of this, which is super exciting. But we do think that for Klout specifically, and the overlap with the different types of people who are involved in the fantasy community, peripherally involved, the heroes access, and the people who are kind of, it's a two-pronged thing, right? Like we think the users cross over really well with the people who play Zed or who would play Zed. So it feels kind of like a game and a game joining forces, right? And we want to set that precedent so that when people look at Klout, they look at Klout as that mindshare aggregator for utility projects, right? Like something that you can own something about and do something with it. If it's just a protocol, like you don't have any ownership over Hyperliquid, dude. Like even if you think you're staking Hype, or even with Kaido and the PFPs, like they're going to do their best, I'm sure, to provide value back to the Yappy Bears, et cetera, over time. But when you think about it structurally, like that, I think Yuhu had went on and said something about how like those NFTs are reflective of the overarching business, right? Like they'll always be the bottom down of the entire business. That's great, right? But ideally there is some like direct protocol, generation going right into that. For us, I can build you the flow of like USD to Zed token to horse, right? To player, right? And it's a very simple pathway: Zed Picks, Zed token, Zed Champions, horses within the game, top horses within the game, top stables within the game, right? And an understanding how simple that pathway is, because I think what is kind of the similarity to Fantasy Top. There are multiple different leagues, multiple different tranches, multiple different stars of heroes, multiple different heroes depending on how much engagement they get. And it's a very understood top to bottom of funnel. And I think that that's why I feel the most crossover with Klout, and why I feel like Klout long term will be the place to go for protocols like ours, games like ours, platforms like ours. We're looking to get that active user base a little bit more involved.
Yeah, so I think with obviously AI has changed a lot in terms of X and marketing and all of the noise. And one of the good things with fantasy is, the hero pool and the community were established before all of this. It was kind of the original InfoFi, SocialFi on X timeline, but it was organic, built on a game layer of fun and strategy. But as you said, these big projects have the ability to get the huge leaderboards, but one thing fantasy always has kind of prided ourselves is finding heroes and them growing into big time heroes. And that's kind of the same direction with kind of these Klout sponsored tournaments. Is out there is the next Bored Apes. They might not be Bored Apes now, but there's smaller projects that are really gonna do some amazing stuff. And so finding those projects that crossover, like you said, where people can actually go use, interact with it, especially games is a heavy a crossover, and everybody in crypto pretty much games somehow growing up. So I think that's a big area to have fun with across the space.
Yeah, and I also think the structure that we set up, right, where you not only have like the ever-present rewards for each of the different tiers, but also adding this boost, right? So like if you talk about Zed this week, you mentioned Zed Champions, you connect your X account to Zed, and you're playing Fantasy Top, you not only have your primary objective, which is to get in the top 25 of each of the individual leagues, but now you also have this other intrinsic boost, right? So like where I could see this going is not only do you have a boost for talking about Zed, But imagine there's 10, 15, 20 other projects that are all sponsored with Cloud, that are all interested in sponsoring a tournament. Even if they only put $1,000 a week each in, right? Now all of a sudden there might be like a variety of other rewards that you can almost micro farm within actually playing the main game, right? We know that the biggest influencers are always going to get the most engagement. Inevitably, ICO Beast will say something about Zed this week, and I'm sure that he will get a huge boost, right? It's inevitable. He has a massive following. But at the same time, how cool could it be for there eventually to be all of these different projects, like very similar to what you see with Kaido? Like they have so many leaderboards that some of the smaller influencers, people who are on the up and up and trying to break into the InfoFi scene might pick like a smaller TGE project because they think that it won't get as much attention from the major KOLs. That type of strategy is incredibly important. Like the fractalization of access to different types of rewards is the entire reason why you guys even probably have multiple tiers of gameplay, right? Like you need to be able to separate out one skill into monetary investment. Otherwise, the game becomes unidirectional and it doesn't even actually make a lot of sense, because as a new player, you look and you say, well, why would I ever create content? Like, how am I ever going to compete with ICOBs, right? Or any of these huge guys, Walls, all these people who are like, dominant HK. HK posts like a couple times about Zed, and right now he's at the top of the leaderboard, right? And that's probably because, once the tournament starts, it started 10 minutes ago, but once it, we'll update the API, we'll have a bunch of new accounts flooding into the leaderboard. We can always adjust like the lifetime clout minimums and stuff like that. Obviously, one of the benefits of working with Cloud is how configurable everything is from what I've seen. I've worked with both major mindshare leaderboards, and like I understand how configurable they are and how important it is to be able to have that level of control. And also, that level of iteration, right? Like I mentioned before, we want to add all these on-chain metrics. If we have our own public API, there's no reason why our API with all of our game-related stats couldn't plug right into Cloud. And then all of a sudden, Cloud starts ingesting how many horses have you raced? How many horses do you own? How much of the racing pool do you own? Do you have Zed token? Are you just holding rewards? How do we evaluate you as like a major contributing member of our game? We have a lot of really active people in Discord who have a ton at stake in this game. I would love to see them step out into X, kind of start to make that content that they, make and spend a lot of time talking about in Discord, because that's just where we're active. I can see a lot of them breaking out because they did that for a little bit with Kaido and the native incentives. If we can provide them a platform that continuously pays them, that is a content creator program, right? And it's not just one where we pick the people we like and we tell them, hey, here's 5K, go talk about us, right? And that's like how all KOL marketing works. This one, we could do, okay, you've actually created content, you score high on Clout, you have all these assets within our game, you've already proven to us that you are an evangelist. Now I can just handpick the people who I know are certified evangelists and incentivize them even more than I already was, for talking about the game. And all of our incentives are aligned. One of the biggest things that we missed in 2021, we being the broader product creator space, right, is that we didn't have alignment from an incentive basis. The tokens would go live with these companies, they would TG extremely high, the VCs would exit, and all of the people would just be play to earn, emitting tokens for the rest of the time, and the chart looks like this, right? Now, that's because the company needed to monetize off of the TGE in order to re-raise money, in order to spend the next several years building whatever the fuck they were building, which oftentimes ended up being nothing. 99.5% of all Web3 games have basically closed their doors. In this resurgence for us building multiple products, in the long term, ZPix should scale to a level where, no one joins the NFL and says, oh, I hope I make some money, right? Even practice squad players make $250,000 a year a season, right? You want to get to that point where playing Zed Champions, playing these games that are bottom of the funnel, are positive expected value on an intrinsic basis. This is an enormous dream, right? Like, this is obviously our end goal business model, where ZPix is big enough that anyone playing Zed Champions is so fortunate to be playing Zed Champions because of the broad spectatorship that they really feel an emotional connection over the product. It will take us a long time to get there, but that is our objective as a business. And all of that aligns really well with using Cloud as like a major distribution pathway, and then using Fantasy Top tournaments as that ignition moment, right? Why should you care about us? Well, we'll give you a little bit of money to care about us for a little bit, talk about us, learn the game, get the attention. What you do with the mindshare that you generate from these initial campaigns is everything. And that's what we learned from Kaido, right? We learned that we have the capability to get between 3 to 8% crypto mindshare with some type of activation, maybe only 10 grand. What we do with it after that is critical, right? It's the connections with the heroes. It's the connections with the people who actually are evangelizing your product with only some broad native incentive. and activating them to be much higher level contributors to sharing the story about your business model moving out into the future.
Yeah, GM Ryan. Silva
Likewise.
here, getting my first shouts in, but I love so much of what you said right there. I mean, a lot of it's super fascinating. Couldn't agree more with kind of just your take on Kaido and how that's really influenced the InfoFi game. And I really love kind of how you put it there with the, combining here with and partnering with Clout. I do feel like it gives Zed and Fantasy, it gives both of those teams a lot more, I would say, organic kind of a look into the mind share that's going to be created on social media by this activation, or really any in the future. You don't have just that what, for better or worse, when you have the Yap run, right, you have accounts yapping about it for a week or two, and then, like you said, it kind of falls off a cliff there. I do feel like this is, like I said, a bit more of an organic way to measure it, and even going back to your last comment there, how you're going to use that ignition moment to kind of spring yourselves forward, and what you do with it after this week, right? I think this is going to be a super interesting test case for that. And I mean, clearly it sounds like you guys have the right idea of kind of how to capitalize on that. So I'm really excited to see A, just how it grows this week, and then B, where you guys take it after this, because I think you've got the pathway nailed down. So I'm really excited to see how you guys execute on that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think like a lot of what you see from, I speak about this ignition point, right? And like let's call it like the mindshare generation event, right? Like whatever the original thing is. Most of these companies that are outlaying 150K for, a cloud or a Yap leaderboard, right? And like trying to get into that type of a situation are doing it for a TGE, right? So the interesting thing about generating attention for a TGE is that it only really needs the attention in order to have a sustained TGE, right? Like you can say something's worth $200 million, and if enough capital comes in that verifies it's worth $200 million for that brief period of time where you have an enormous amount of crypto Twitter and mindshare attention, so be it. That's their objective. Their objective is to TGE at a high level so that VCs notice them, so that they can give rewards away and that they can dilute themselves and sell out and do all of this shit, right? Like the unique situation for us is that 1, our token's already live, right? 2, we've fundraised before. 3, we have runway. 4, we have 2 products. We are trying to use mindshare now as the new era of marketing, right? We understand that in order to get attention in this space natively right now, you need to pay for it. We're okay with that as long as we're paying for something that we can actually utilize as a long-term strategy. Paying KOLs or even micro KOLs for like a one-time campaign, that is in and of itself an ignition event. What you do afterwards is, again, just as critical as the original attention event. If I got like the 15 best KOLs right now, pay them all whatever they wanted just to talk about us for the next week, what happens at week 2, right? I have to keep paying those guys the exact same amount I was paying them, or at least give them some level of financial incentive to make their time, effort, and thoughts worth it. The problem with that is that they have no reason to continue evangelizing us. Whereas with this setup, let's say at week 2, I look at my leaderboard. At the top of my leaderboard is the loudest voices with the most attention, with the most at risk within the game, with the most to lose if this game doesn't scale. Those specific people are incredibly valuable to us as a business, and we'd like them to know it. This is the most efficient way for us to discover those individuals and reward them directly for how they're actually engaging with our platform. That is infinitely more powerful than any just KOL marketing strategy that you might get talking to, some of the biggest firms in the space, right? They will say to you, hey, I'll set you up like the sickest little GTM campaign that you need for your TGE, and, good luck after that. And you hope that your TGE goes so well that everybody wants to talk about you for the rest of the time because you guys made all this money, et cetera. But then over time, you see the attention curve wane. Like the only people who are sustaining a significant amount of attention are the protocol-backed, your revenue generation-backed protocols, right? Like Pump, Hyperliquid. And everyone's now waking up to the fact like, oh, is like the way to make a sustainable token model, just buying back token. Well, it's 2 things, right? Like tokens are not these new things, concepts that no one understands. It's free market, right? You need one of 2 things. You need new users with new capital buying the token in order to make it go up because they want to use whatever is the underlying protocol, or something else needs to be putting money into the token. Oftentimes in 2021, this is VC-backed, revenue, I'm sorry, VC-backed support, or, crowdfunding, or, what, just random ghost TGs and things like that. If you don't have one of those two things, yeah, there's less buyers than there are sellers, right? Like, it's a very simple concept. For us, instead of going the route of just constantly needing new users to come onto our Web3 game, which is a very difficult thing to do, we're still going to try and scale, our Web3 game, right? But is it going to have 100,000 users? That's not the most realistic thing in this space. You see a lot of these companies come out and say, we have 500,000 wallets on our game. We're all plugged into crypto Twitter. We all know the biggest influencers in the space. We all know where all these people actually are. If you have 500,000 people on your site right now, you would be making billions of dollars, right? Like, that's probably more than the entire crypto Twitter active user base, right? So, and it's because people string up multiple wallets, Sybil attacks, all of this stuff. So the whole purpose of my rant here is that we want to do a few things. One, we want to verify what our users are doing within our game, what they're doing on socials, and what they're doing on other games. For now, it'll specifically be Fantasy Top. One of the very interesting things about this Klout partnership is that the Fantasy Top team could come to me and say, hey, this user is starting to do a lot of volume in Fantasy Top. Like, what do you know about them? I might be able to go into my database and say, through their X connectivity, say, oh, that's one of our biggest stables. Like, let's reach out to them together and maybe they can do joint types of content, right? This network of connected projects that build out from the Klout leaderboard, all centralized down into your X account, could be much bigger than just Fantasy Top and Zed. These things that you're seeing from some of these companies who want to build like this kind of decentralized arcade, right? Where they're like, oh, we have all these people playing all these different games and it's all linked by one, protocol backed token or whatever, right? That's a great concept, right? But as much as decentralization is such like a great concept, if you are not able to tell who these wallets are, that's when things become unsustainable. And that's what you're seeing from these projects who are touting all of these wallets. You might have 500 actual DAO and 50,000 wallets created because one guy creates 5,000 wallets to farm your airdrop. And the next thing you have no idea who anybody is. So when you go to actually distribute rewards, when you start having some level of success, it becomes unsustainable. And I understand this intimately, right? Like, we had, we probably did like $6 to $8 million of treasury rewards in Zed Run over the course of the 3 years that I ran live ops. And all of the time we were always saying to ourselves, like, how can we get more sophisticated with this? How can we get more sophisticated with this? And the answer is always some level of like light KYC, right? But instead of asking people for their fucking address so that they, we know who they are, it's such a better experience to link you to whatever your on-chain social identity is. And it's clear that the space is going to use X, right? You have Privy, you have all these different types of on-ramps that allow you to just sign in with your X account. You don't really need the KYC. It's a light version. But if you have this combo of Klout, which is like a verifiable activity, right? If you have zero Klout, you're probably a bot, right? And as Klout gets better and better and better at cycling out AI, cycling out, slop or whatever it is, we will instantly be able to really identify, okay, this person's worth rewarding for me. I don't need to know where they live. I don't need to know their address. I don't need to know all these things. I just need to know if they have worth, right? And worth is valuable. This is, potential LTV, long-term value. It's something that all products, will be looking at in terms of onboarding users. You want to know whether or not they have high LTV, right? This platform, the Klout Zed partnership, is allowing us to identify that in a way that makes our reward generation and reward distribution incredibly sustainable and well worthwhile for both parties. And I do think that that's been something really missing in the space.
Yeah, I think obviously with Privy, being so successful and, kind of linking X to on-chain wallets has kind of become the norm. And it's always been one of my favorite parts with Fantasy is, your performance is tied to your social account, especially these bigger accounts, that do play Fantasy. You can see how good they are. You can see, if they talk about it on the timeline, they know what they're talking about. And, I think, it's obviously a lot harder to spin up and farm a social account into something big. You can't just make, that like 5,000 wallets. It's a lot harder. So you can't really, ruin it, but tying that to kind of your game performance in CT, I kind of always look at it as like Game Center on the iPhone. You have all these games connected to one social network. And, that's kind of what I feel like we're recreating here on CT, on chain with these games. And it's just a matter of just connecting all the different nodes here and there.
Exactly. Totally agree.
And just a real quick for those watching, the tournament did go live a little while ago. I've been updating the ticker at the bottom with heroes on the board. I'm sure I'm trying not to miss any, but I am throwing those on. And if you have any questions for Ryan about Zed Champions or the sponsored tournament, please put those in the comments and we'll be sure to ask him as well. Silva or 710, do you guys have any more or have another question you want to ask? If not, I'll kind of jump in.
So just something kind of popping on my head here right now, because Carpenter is our one of our hosts for our deck building series, where we kind of go through with hero special guests how to play the game. So I'm thinking maybe after the tournament, as the partnership goes, we maybe get both of you guys on stream and we do a cross collab. You show him how to get some horses, get in the game. He'll show you how to get some cards.
Yeah, we do like a game night. That'd be fun. I've been following Fantasy Top for so long, but I'm so heads down with Zed. I honestly don't do anything else crypto. Like I literally just do Zed now. But I would love to get involved because my brother, has been playing for a long time. So he's like been my direct source. He's been playing, I literally think, for over a year now. And he's diehard, sets his stuff. He talks all the time on Twitter. I won't dox him, but I was able to, basically learn a lot, about the product, even since the early Blast days I've been following. And then I've kind of seen let's call it like the ascension curve, right? And my job, as chief of staff at Zed is to recognize all of these different strategic opportunities. Leapfrogging onto Kaido, as successful as they are, as much revenue as they're generating, all of these types of things is a much different structural setup than catching on with Clout, being base centric, right? Like that's super important to me. It's the reason we're building on base. I truly believe that if anybody's going to onboard the next billion users to crypto, it's going to be Coinbase. I think fighting against them, showing, everything that they've seen is just a lost cause. And that's why we build on base. So I was extremely excited when I saw Fantasy bridge to base. I was like, oh, it's time. Let's be the unified force that can start to build out this web of base centric products. And then hopefully broadly, start to expand to, all of these different types of places, because there's no reason why, Clout couldn't partner with projects on Abstract or projects on Arbitrum or literally anywhere, right? There's no X is, that single node, which I do think is like, it's funny that X has become like the uni chain, right? Like if you think about it, everything is eventually linked back to your X identity, wherever your PFP is. Hopefully Twitter doesn't make their own L2.
I wouldn't put it past Elon.
Yeah.
I have a whole article about that, about X making a chain.
Yeah.
Posted on my X. So
well, I'll show one of my favorite products, Banker. Obviously everybody knows Banker at this point, but like when I first saw Banker coming onto the scene, I was like, oh, like sending payments on X directly, verifiably is such like an interesting ledger. Like obviously you can go to Base-Scan, Etherscan, Solscan, and you can see literally every transaction ever. But for some reason, seeing it on your social feed attributed to an identity makes it feel so different. Like I saw somebody just like ape into like a multiple ETH buy of a token just with one, prompt to Banker. And I was like, yeah, that's like a social event, right? Like it used to be these different accounts like Unusual Whales or, all those different types of X accounts who like report these huge buys on chain. And they would just say this unverified wallet just, bought $10 million of Bitcoin or something like that. And I was like, well, probably that guy wants to be hidden, or, it's crime season anyway. So maybe he's undocked for a reason. But there are those moments where like, you do want everyone to know that you did that on chain, right? It is something that you're proud of, something that you want to boast about. That's the reason why every single one of these trading apps has that export button that posts this cool little graphic. I'm up 70% on Hyperliquid. Like, nice job, show all your friends, et cetera. You made the right call. That's honestly why I believe it's even called Clout in the first place, right? Like that's the whole point. Trying to establish some type of identity-based prestige, I think is why we're all in this space. If you're not looking for outside the risk reward, this is not the space for you anyway. I think we all share that level of identity.
Absolutely. Oh, it might be, no, I'm not muted. Real quick, I had a question come through. It says, can we fund our account without wallet connecting, e.g. a Zed wallet when you set up with the account? I want to buy Zed and spend it to that wallet. How do you do that without connecting a wallet? Also, What is verify your identity?
Yeah, sure. So multiple pronged question there. So
Yeah.
when you log on to Zed Champions, you can log on with any way you want, email, we have a bunch of different social connections, and that will get you into your Zed Champions account. From there, you do have the option to connect an external wallet. It's just through Wallet Connect. So like this isn't some, spotty little type thing. Like you just plug in your Wallet Connect code. You can even connect your banker wallet, for example, just as like how open connectivity Wallet Connect is these days. You don't need to do this at all. If you go and buy Zed token on literally, any, Coinbase wallet, you can buy it on Coinbase. You can just go to Uniswap directly if you want to. You can buy Zed token there. And then all you need to do is send your Zed token to your Zed Champions wallet address. So if you create your account on Zed Champions, and again, we'll put an article together with a lot of the funding information and I'll link some resources. You click on your wallet, you'll see your wallet address. We use Dynamic XYZ for any of the product people out there listening. Creates a zero dev wallet, and then you basically have this semi-custodial wallet on site. You can take that wallet address, send your Zed token directly there, and then you can do everything within the game that you need to do. The verifying the identity is literally just connecting your X account, which is a very similar process, right? You scroll down and you just, basically sign in with your X account anyway. Very simple process.
Okay.
Very
Perfect.
similar to what you do Privy and everything. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry for the multi-prong. I literally seen it come
That's
through
all
and
right.
read it exactly how.
No, that's fine. That's fine. No, good question.
And that was shout out to Girl, my Sun-Eyed Girl, which is actually a guy. But yeah, he's a huge Fantasy Top member. So
Cheers.
thanks for the question.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Star Platinum is now on the board 21 seconds ago with one of his threads. This one will probably go bang. It's about a CEO died and took the keys. So yeah, Star's on there. I gotta catch up the tickers, but yeah. So I lost my question. Dang it! It was about no, it's back up. So how long has I know you talked about you kind of did stuff with other leaderboards and stuff. When did you or what was the deciding factor on coming to Fantasy or Clout?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think I guess we'll start it with what we did with Kaido. So we had these badges within the game that were basically their transition from Zed Run to Zed Champions. So what we did was we made a leaderboard of everyone in Zed Run historically, and then we gave them badge rewards to transition them over to the new game. Depending on what badge you held, you got airdropped starting horses, Zed, Rezed, etc. The way that it was set up was we had leftover badges that didn't get claimed. People who probably hadn't played Zed in a long time, back in 2021, 2022. We knew we had churned some users who still held, tons of Zed Run horses from the old game, etc. And, they're just not coming back to crypto for whatever reason. So we gave them a long period to claim, and the unclaimed badges were basically worth, a significant portion of allocation of token over the next year. So we used Kaido to effectively find people we could distribute those badges to. The problem was it's very different. One, the game wasn't live. Neither product was live. The overall business model wasn't being discussed yet because neither product was live, right? So we were in this situation where we needed to onboard people into a game at probably its most difficult time to be onboarded into, where you had to breed a horse, you had to have a badge, you had to already have Zed because you were competing with old players who had all this, incumbent, let's call it skill and resource backed. They already had Zed token. They already knew, what they were trying to do in the new game. They already understood the core loop. They've been playing the beta. They've been doing all these things. So it was very difficult to join. So we instantly found that there was a huge knowledge curve that we hadn't solved yet. The product wasn't live, so you couldn't learn by trying. And staking wasn't live yet, which is kind of our top of funnel. Come on, put $5 on a horse, watch it race for a couple of days. That's a super interesting and easy to understand loop. Because we didn't have that yet, we knew that one, the people who were talking about the game are probably not talking about anything meaningful or substantial. The game's not even live. What the fuck could they be talking about, right? And two, we definitely had no way to know whether or not they were actually coming onto the game because we weren't connecting X yet. We needed to basically look at the Kaido wallets, connect them with wallets within the game, run it through an LLM and see which one's synced up. And it was a very manual process. InfoFi was still kind of at least from my perspective with the leaderboards on the budding edge, I don't think any other game had created a leaderboard of any type yet. It was basically, if you looked at the Kaido leaderboard section, it was Zed Champions amongst multiple billion-dollar protocols. right? So like we were kind of like a fish out of the water with the type of users that we were trying to attract. Those launch pads, those L2s, those major exchanges, they need volume, right? They need attention-based volume too. Big whales will do volume on Hyperliquid if everyone's talking about Hyperliquid, regardless of whether or not 1,000 people are doing $10 each of volume, which is that bottom tranche of DAU, right? We knew that we needed to get an incredibly high LTV potential user base who had really high signaling in order to give them a million Zed, right? Which is the time like 10K or something like that. That's a huge reward to give to one individual. And you also need to make sure that that is going to be an evangelist for you. Otherwise, you're just burning cash. So it was a very difficult to structure campaign because we didn't have enough information. So when I came to Fantasy Top, I recognized one of two things. One, the team is just absolutely cracked, and I knew that they would work as much as they needed to configure this type of concept for me. And that was super intriguing. Like I wanted to work with a team that wanted to be on the cutting edge of trying to do something new, right? Not just creating the next leaderboard model that, you come, hey, here's 150K and, you get to TGE and things like that. And I'm not knocking the business model of Kaido at all. I think they've been wildly successful. I still have a relationship with the team there. I've enjoyed working with them. We'd love to use a capital launchpad in the future for OTCs and things like that to raise. I will continue to leverage them exactly as the tool that I currently perceive them to be, right? Which is another attention generation, probably at a broader scale. But what I'm looking for and what we're looking for as a team is to monetize and attract and distribute rewards to an evangelist group. And I think fostering an evangelist group, seeing the Zed community, seeing the Fantasy Top community, and seeing the web of different types of discussions that branch out from the individuals involved in these two games is a much more high touch user base, much more risk prone, much more ready to try new things that could potentially have outside, and they want to all be early, right? I think that's the difference. The difference is we're early now, right? We're the first type of partnership happening on, this scale at InfoFi. We're going to continue to help set the model and bring other connections to cloud if they need, different types of people who, hey, we're a budding Web3 game and we'd like a leaderboard and we'd like to, have on-chain metrics blended into it. What type of model do you have for that? I hope that the cloud team will eventually develop a very strict type of, onboarding funnel that we help define with them, right? Oh, hey guys, it would be great if you were able to access our API. Oh, it'd be great if you guys had XYZ tool on the admin panel. Developing that type of relationship, I think, is like a major strategic advantage for a partnership like this versus one with Kaido, which has they have their business model. They have a huge team. They know exactly what they're looking to do with the different types of people who they bring on. They have their funnel. They have their pitch deck, right? Like this is exactly what you're getting. The configurability of this relationship and the way to kind of trailblaze is what was so attractive to us as a team. And of course, as a legacy brand that we also think holds some level of authority that can prop both of us up in a really meaningful way.
Ryan, real quick, kind of a little bit of an ancillary question, kind of an offshoot of that. I've been in the space since 2020, 2021, so I definitely have had my fun playing around with Zed Run back in, the earlier days, right?
Sure.
Few years back. But having kind of fallen off that wagon, in more recent times, do you know any particular not heroes, but maybe like Zed champion influencers or social media accounts that you think would be just a good follow for anyone like myself who, wants to get back into the game, or, kind of the same way I follow all of my Fantasy Top heroes for, just to give them engagement and make sure I'm keeping up with where they are during the tournament, someone that, kind of has that educational mindset or, a weekly update, something like that, that could also potentially be a future, Fantasy Top hero. Does that does that sort of make sense? Anyone I could look into there?
No, yeah, totally. I will, before I go on this next rant, I will say I'm a little bit biased because my onboarding into Zed is that my buddy and I built a third-party tool. We ended up getting acquired, then got acquired by Zed, and that's my on-ramp into Zed. So I always am extremely passionate about people who build on top of protocols. I think that's the entire point of decentralization. It's the entire point of crypto. It's the entire reason everything is publicly available. It's why we have a public API coming. So right now we have like a bunch of tools that are being developed. And what I'd like to do is, I'll mention a few of them, Zed's site, et cetera. I will actually put together a list and give to the Fantasy Top team which will say, hey, are you looking to get involved in Zed Champions? Here are the people you should follow. I don't want to do them a disservice by just naming just a bunch of guys off the top of my head right now. I'm going to put a cohesive list together for you guys. I'm going to build I'm going to label their third-party tools, which are literally built to help onboard you to Zed Champions easier. We help fund them. We give them Zed tokens so that they can keep going, pay their monthly server cost, play the game themselves if they need to get some additional information on what to build on. This network of people that we help cultivate have been building around this game and talking about this game at an extremely high level for years. What they haven't been incentivized to do outside of building those tools is create content and meaningful discussion on X about what they're doing. So you won't see a lot of that generated yet, but what I've advised them on and what they will see as soon as they start to see how these partnerships and the long-term clout relationship develops is that there's meaningful incentive for them not only to use their extremely high level of skill in this game. I'm not joking when I say a lot of these guys who play Zed Champions now know the game as well as I do. And that's an incredibly advantageous place to be as a designer, as a product builder, is to know that there's people, one, extremely passionate enough to build on top of the game that your company is creating, but two, know it well enough that the stuff that they're creating on top of the game has meaningful impact to the people playing the game and helps keep retention high, helps keep churn low, helps keep people advancing up the knowledge curve. So what I'd love to do, Silva, is put that list together, give it to the Fantasy Top team, and we'll blast that across socials so that everyone playing Fantasy Top can have a good idea of who to follow within Zed Champs.
Beautiful, man. Thank you. That's couldn't have hoped for a better answer there. I mean,
Very good.
I'll be able to throw that into a Twitter list, and just kind of tab over that once or twice a day and just kind of keep up with what's going on. So yeah, thank you, man. That'll go really far in kind of helping connect a lot of the two communities there.
I agree. Yeah, great question.
And I know we talk about how all this crazy stuff and how it connects and the leaderboards and SocialFi and but at the end of the day, why this really works and why we think it's really going to be awesome is we just want people to try something new, go out, try something new, have fun on chain, in crypto, talk about it. It's ultimately that's what it comes down to. It's super simple. And then you just build on top of that. So I think, hearing you talk, about, how Zed is kind of, coming back, with the core community, there's a lot of, makes me realize how similar, kind of the projects are. And, I think this kind of makes you realize, there's probably a lot more of this out there between projects.
Exactly.
And, just having a fun way to collab, that's just not some boring Twitter post or whatever that doesn't do anything for the users, the players. This really gets everybody together trying and, they're getting rewarded at the end of the day. So, yeah, super excited for this. I'm like ecstatic. It's awesome.
Yeah, we are too, for sure. And I think you highlight like such a unique opportunity here where, we're not just like and hopefully the other projects that eventually partnership with Clout aren't just like one that have no PMF and like have no traction, whatever, and are using you guys as like a launch pad, right? For us, we're trying to build both brands up, right? With a unified partnership, with the diversification of rewards. We give away rewards in our game every single day, every single week, every single season. So does Fantasy Top. These are two like mutually beneficial, games and protocols that are both on the ascension curve, right? If you're both on the ascension curve and you're allowing users who are using both things on base to both transact intermediately, right? I win Zed token here. I'm not going to be upset if you use Zed token to go play Fantasy Top. The exact same way I'll be ecstatic if people who play Fantasy Top use ETH they earn from Fantasy Top to come play Zed. If we continue to think about the broad landscape of utility-based, protocols being this competition-based structure, we're never going to succeed, right? Like the people who are watching someone play Call of Duty aren't like, well, why aren't you playing Fortnite? Like, come on, dude. Like you're making Fortnite not be good because you're playing Call of Duty. Like that's not how gaming works. Gaming is by definition of short-term attention-based mechanism. That's the whole point. It's what you do to escape from reality, right? Why would we limit the interconnectivity of all these different fun and exciting things to do on chain? Our goal, and the reason why I think these things blend so well together, is that we see Fantasy Top as like the Coliseum of influence, right? Like who are the most impactful people talking about anything? Why does that blend so well with us? Well, the game's called Zed Champions for a reason, right? There's a reason why our leaderboard is sorted by the top 10 most valuable horses within the game who are competing for the most value every single day, twice per day. And that's who we want everyone to go stake on to create this experience that will scale, right? There's no reason why someone wouldn't be talking about a horse that's worth a couple $100,000. How do I know this? I know it because of the Forbes article we got written in 2021. I know it from the enormous level of Web2 influence that we got as a brand. We partnered with NASCAR, Atari, Budweiser. All of these huge brands were interested because there's something synonymous about racing, right? Competition on any scale is what brings us to this space to compete for hopefully life-changing levels of rewards. And that's how we redefine the entire game. And that's why I think there's so much of a connectivity between Fantasy Top and us.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's the more I know. So HK, who is will be part of this morning, the countdown, fantasy countdown in the future, was posting and saying that like how excited he is that it's already been updated. It's showing the boost. You kind of want to talk a little bit how that boost is going to work, or like if you can 710, I guess that might be more.
Yeah, I can go over it.
Yeah, sorry about that.
we posted in the post. But yeah, so pretty much for all 4 leagues, the top 25 rankings are in the money, eligible to earn Zed rewards. For those decks, if they are in the money, they also have the ability to boost their rewards by earning clout, creating content around Zed champions. That boost works by first level, they can go ahead and create an account, and that'll boost them up 1.2 times. We want them in Zed, trying it, getting them over there. So, make the account in order to activate the boost. And then after that, the top, if you're in the top 300 in terms of Zed clout, you'll receive another boost on your rewards. If you're in the top 50, you'll receive an even larger boost. So, as players kind of watch their decks throughout the week, they're also going to have to watch their clout leaderboard ranking. And they're not only competing with, the fantasy players who are, talking about it, but also, the Zed community, they're going to be talking about it. So they're going to have to be competing against them. So in a sense, they're almost acting as heroes here around Zed content. So the players are getting that kind of taste of the tournament, the leaderboard, staying on top of it, and making sure they get the content out in time.
Perfect. Yeah, that's like the added game, like gamification of it, as well as like, again, like Ryan had said earlier, having like a stake in the InfoFi, right?
Yeah, I think this is what's I found so unique about the opportunity, right? Is like there's 2 ways for a project like mine partnering, in this direct pathway to access some level of distribution pipeline, right? If you look at the top 25 scorers in all of the different leagues within Fantasy Top, you intrinsically know that those are probably high spenders within that tranche, right? Like if you win the elite, you probably have high LTV to Fantasy Top. So we can access those people with these boosts long term. We did the 10K, as a blanket, and then a 5K with the boost. In the future, we might just be able to do the boost like every week, right? If we can see that there's ROI and we're getting some level of attention from these very important Fantasy Top players and heroes, we will continue to pay for that. It's worth it for us, right? Now, then we also have our own clout leaderboard. So not only can we provide boosts within the native Fantasy Top experience for talking about us, but now I can access the leaderboard directly and do, linear rewards directly to the people on the leaderboard themselves on a seasonal basis, weekly basis. And we have a ton of plans coming here that I won't speak about just yet because we're trying to focus on just the Fantasy Top tournament. The clout stuff will be going on long into the future. It will continue to be an effective distribution platform for us, but making sure it stays gamified is why it's fun, right? Just talking about something to talk about it is one thing. Talking about it while competing about talking about it, while playing and competing about playing about it is the entire tranche. I think is super interesting to me.
Yeah, it's like fantasy. I've been hooked. Anyone that knows, and everyone here and watching has been hooked on fantasy for, I can almost guarantee a year, if not. Like I know there's a bunch listening to that started more recently, is now hooked, and will be playing for long in the future. But fantasy itself is fun, and then now this is like got me feeling like I did when I first found fantasy again, right? Is there's this new layer. Yeah. So now it's just like my wheels are turning even more.
Yeah, I really hope that other projects similar to ours take a look at the platform that is getting created, the direction that Fantasy Top clearly wants to go, both from gamifying, everything, gamifying not just attention, but gamifying the distribution on top of attention is like it's a totally novel concept, right? Like, with the Kaido leaderboards, it's just a distribution to the top performers, right? They're talking about it and competing about talking about it, but there's no additional gamification layer. And I think that is what makes this whole situation different. Like, not only can you play our game to earn more points in order to score higher on Clout, you can talk about it while you're doing it, or you can go and play Fantasy Top and earn boost for playing our game and talking about our game. This interconnectivity and this web is what I've talked to, the twins about being this huge scalable aspect of what Clout can be. There's no reason why there shouldn't eventually be 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 games who are all putting maybe 500 to $1,000 of rewards every single week, across the top of the leaderboard as native incentives to get a boost. Now imagine if you're playing Fantasy Top, you have your core score, right? And then you look at your micro scores or whatever the 710, and the guys will come up with something crazy to, name this. It'll be way cooler than what I can come up with. But you have all of these side scores that can earn you rewards outside of the core loop. And it doesn't necessarily have to be the top 25 people. It could be bigger, right? So maybe you missed the top 25 to get the core rewards. You were on, number 28 and you almost made it. It was a good deck, good week. You got close. How interesting could it be if projects are funding packs for you to get, right? Instead of giving $5,000 worth of Zed, what if VHS bought $5,000 worth of packs and gave them to players, right? And there's just so many different avenues when you have two actual games for connecting the groups. The exact same way Fantasy Top could come in and say, hey, we'd love to give, some Fantasy Top packs to the top 10 Zed players to see if they'll come over and play our game too. People aren't full ported in every single project that they're playing, right? There's no reason why you should be able to bring people over on like a cross-compatible basis. And I think that web will continue to grow. And I honestly think Clout is worlds ahead of starting to develop what the most important architecture is. And that's the relationships with the products that they work with. It needs to be constant touch points. And what I can say working with this team, we talk every single day throughout this partnership. It's been very high touch, very cross-compatible. And I think that's super important. Like, the business development relationships are why things, can go sour, or why things can, last much longer and set up the space for copying that model in a much bigger way.
Absolutely. And that's one point that really stuck out to me, is especially being around in the 20 to 2022, really the NFT, like the game Web3 gaming whole thing kind of started rolling up to snowball or whatever. Was you'd see a lot of these quote unquote partnerships that were really just like short-term collabs. They would do like whitelist giveaways or like token giveaways, or just very short, and then they'd never talk about each other again. They'd never interact with each other. And this is like, you can tell it's a legit, like, long-lasting partnership to where you're both mutually vested in the other one's success. I mean, it just sounds incredible, and that's what I've always that's what InfoFi has been missing. I don't like calling it InfoFi because it's not really.
We're calling it FunFi now, right?
FunFi. Ooh, I like that better. I like that better.
I like it too.
FunFi.
I like it.
It's awesome.
But yeah, this is this is kind of I mean, people don't really know yet, but obviously this kind of first partnership is one of many where we're kind of pushing into the gaming side of crypto Twitter. And as you talked about, the cross game, compatibility, getting Zed into fantasy, but also, we want to get fragments into Zed. So not only, Zed players can win fantasy pieces and come over, but fantasy players can also go over into Zed and earn fragments because they know how useful those are. And they're already getting Zed tokens and experience learning it. And so once that's in there, it's easy for them to hop in, and it's something they want. So they learn something new trying to win it. And so I think as we do this, and hopefully, it kind of grows, but, all these different games, just interconnectivity, throwing game pieces all over the place. And it's just it's just like a treasure hunt across crypto Twitter gaming. So it'll be exciting. It's, I think we both have a very similar vision for this all. yeah, it's gonna grow into something pretty cool, I think.
Absolutely. And yeah, it's been a great show, a great first episode of Fantasy Countdown. And I really appreciate Ryan coming on, as well as the my fellow co-host. And then Ryan, is there anything you want to touch on, kind of as a closing thought?
No, and things how I always do with a little bit of a CTA, right? Just as a reminder, if you want your clout to start getting counted in the tournament for Fantasy Top, all you need to do is log on to Zed Champions. You can connect your account in just a few clicks. We'll have an article that will get posted soon if it hasn't gotten posted already. That will help you through that process. And that's as simple as it takes. And then once you actually have an account on Zed Champions linked to your X account, we know everything about what you do in Fantasy Top. We can access that information. And there will certainly be some type of activation throughout Clout and into the future that can help you onboard to Zed Champions. But you're more than welcome to obviously buy Zed Token, Coinbase Wallet, Coinbase Dex, Uniswap itself. Swap that over to your in-game account, and you could start staking on horses right now. Actually, tonight when season 2 begins at 8 p.m. Sorry, I forgot that we're currently in downtime until the season goes live tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern.
Eastern. Okay, that's what I was gonna ask you is what time. Perfect. So I'll try and get a post out around that too. But thank you.
Great.
Thank you again so much. Gentlemen, do you guys want to any closing thoughts or anything for Ryan?
Yeah, just wanted to say thank you, Ryan. Appreciate everything. A lot of great conversation, really just high level overview of, Zed Champions, InfoFi, FunFi, that's right, we're calling it now. So, anyone who might not have, been able to catch the whole stream, I would really implore you, go back, listen to it from the start. A lot of great stuff going on. Thank you for having me, fellas, and can't wait till the next one.
Absolutely. Yes, we'll be live again next week. Go ahead, 710.
No, yeah, this was awesome. It could not have gone any better. Super excited. And then, as Ryan said, they have downtime, but they'll have some announcements coming out. And so we will, the fantasy account as well, in terms of the Clout leaderboard and everything. So look out for that. There's a lot more coming with this. So as again, I always say, it's going to be fun. So I appreciate you guys doing this for the first show.
Yeah, awesome. We will catch you guys on the timeline, and definitely look out for some clips coming out from this place too. I think I'll even start clipping. There's some good stuff down here. So we will see you guys on the timeline. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Silva. Thank you, 710, and everyone watching. Bye.